Ethan Ward did not expect anyone to notice him. He walked into the medical hall of Lyra 7 with quiet steps, holding a sealed data case in one hand. He was there for a simple reason. He had to deliver a message from the Human Trade Office to the station commander. That was all. He planned to leave as soon as the job was done. The medical hall was large, clean, and calm. Soft blue lights glowed along the walls. Strange alien machines made low humming sounds. A few patients rested in clear healing pods. Nurses in silver. Uniforms moved from bed to bed without making much noise. Everything felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. Ethan liked that he had seen enough war, enough pain, and enough burning skies to know peace was rare. So he kept his head down and moved forward, hoping no one would stop him. At the far end of the room, near a wide glass wall, stood an alien woman and a small girl. The woman looked important. Her dark robe was rich and elegant, lined with thin silver marks that showed high rank. Her posture was straight, proud, and careful. She stood like someone used to command, someone who did not trust easily. Beside her stood the girl. She looked no older than 10 by human standards. She was small and thin, with pale blue skin and large silver eyes. A soft medical wrap covered one arm, and there was a tired weakness in the way she stood close to her mother. She looked like someone still healing from more than just a wound. Ethan did not pay much attention at first. He had learned long ago not to stare at strangers, especially on alien stations where one wrong look could mean disrespect. So he kept walking. Then the girl looked up, her eyes met his, and everything changed. She went completely still. The color in her face faded. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her small hand tightened around her mother's sleeve for one long second. She looked as if she had forgotten how to breathe. Ethan slowed. Something in her expression made him stop. It was not simple fear. It was not the usual worry many aliens showed when they saw a human soldier. This was something deeper. Shock, memory, recognition. The girl took one weak step back. Her breathing became fast and uneven. Her mother noticed at once and turned to her. "Luma?" she asked softly, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "What is wrong?" But Luma did not answer. She kept staring at Ethan as if she had seen a ghost. The soft sounds of the room seemed to fade. Even the nurses nearby stopped moving when they saw the girl's face. One doctor turned away from a console and looked across the hall. The peaceful feeling in the room began to crack. Ethan stood still, confused. He knew he had never been to this station before. He would have remembered a child like her. Yet the way she looked at him was too real, too strong to be a mistake. Luma's eyes filled with tears. Then, in a weak, shaking voice, she whispered, "Mom." Her mother bent down closer. "Luma, tell me, what is it?" The girl swallowed hard. Her whole body trembled. Then she said the words that froze the room. "It's him." Her mother looked up at Ethan for the first time with full attention. Her calm face turned cold at once. She moved half a step in front of her daughter. "Him?" she asked. Luma nodded slowly, still unable to look away from Ethan. The tears in her eyes finally fell. "He's the human," we said, her voice breaking. "He's the human who saved me." No one moved, no one spoke. The words hung in the air like a sudden shockwave. Two nurses exchanged confused looks. The doctor near the console straightened in silence. Even the low hum of the machines now felt loud in the stillness. Ethan felt his chest tighten. For a moment, he did not understand. Then a memory hit him like cold rain, a broken shuttle in a storm. A child trapped in twisted metal, blue blood on frozen ground, a small hand reaching out in the dark. He looked at the girl again, really looked at her this time. The silver eyes, the pale skin, The same frightened face, now older and stronger, but still the same, he remembered. That border world, that storm, that impossible night Luma. Ethan had not expected to ever see her. Again the mother slowly rose to her full height. Her eyes stayed fixed on Ethan, sharp and dangerous now. She held her daughter close, but her voice remained controlled. "What did you just say?" she asked Luma. Luma wiped her tears, but her hands were still shaking. "It was him," she said. "I know it was. He carried me out. He stayed with me in the storm. He told me to stay awake." Now the mother's face changed too. Confusion mixed with fear. Fear mixed with something else, something heavier, because no one on this station knew the full truth about what had happened to her daughter near the border. They all believed she had survived by luck. They all believed the rescue team found her. Alone, Ethan said nothing. He could feel every eye in the room on him now. The mother took one slow step forward. Her voice dropped low and sharp. "What did you do for my daughter?" she asked. "And why did no one tell me?" Ethan looked at Luma's pale face, at the tears still running down her cheeks. And he understood one thing very clearly. The past he thought was buried had just walked back into the light. And this room was only the beginning. No one in the medical hall moved for several long seconds. The silence after Luma's words felt heavy and strange. It was no longer the calm silence of a healing room. It was the silence of a secret breaking open. Sarah, Luma's mother, kept one arm protectively around her daughter while staring at Ethan with hard, careful eyes. She was trying to stay calm. But the shock on her face was clear. She had spent months asking questions about the border accident. She had read every report. She had spoken to commanders, pilots, and rescue teams. All of them had told the same story. Luma's shuttle had gone down. A recovery team found her alive. There had been no mention of a human, not one word. And now her daughter was standing there, pale and shaking, saying that a human male had saved her life. Sarah turned slightly toward Luma. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice low but firm. Right now, Luma looked up at her mother. Her silver eyes were wet with tears, but there was something else in them too. Fear, yes, but also relief. Relief that she did not have to keep the truth inside anymore. It happened after the crash. Luma said softly. The room remained quiet. Even the nearby staff pretended to work while listening closely. "My shuttle did not land," Luma continued. "It fell." Her breathing shook for a moment, and Sarah gently squeezed her shoulder. Luma closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. "It was dark," she said. "I remember fire first, then smoke, then cold." Ethan stayed where he was, silent and still. He did not interrupt. He knew the memory was hard. Luma looked at the floor as she spoke, as if she could still see that broken world under her feet. The shuttle was torn open. I could hear metal moving in the wind. My leg was trapped. My cum unit was dead. I called for help, but no one answered. Her voice became smaller. I thought no one would find me. One of the nurses near the wall lowered her head. Another looked at Ethan with new interest. Luma continued. "The storm started maybe an hour later, maybe less. I don't know. I was cold. So cold, I could not feel my hands. The sky was full of dust and ice. I heard animals outside." Sarah's face tightened. She had never heard this much detail before. "The rescue report said you were unconscious when they found you," Sarah said quietly. "I was," Luma replied. But not at first. Her eyes slowly lifted toward Ethan. "I saw him before that." The room felt even smaller now. Luma took a breath. "I heard steps outside the shuttle. Heavy steps. I thought it was a scavenger. I thought it had come to finish me." Her voice trembled. Then the door moved. Someone forced it open. She paused. It was a human. A few people in the hall exchanged uneasy looks. Luma kept speaking. He looked injured. His face had blood on one side. His jacket was torn. One of his gloves was missing. He looked tired. But when he saw me, he did not hesitate. Ethan remembered that moment clearly. The broken ship, the smell of burnt fuel, the little alien child trying not to cry. He checked the fire first, Luma said. Then he cut the metal near my leg. He used his own tool because mine was broken. It took time. I think it hurt him to do it. His hand was shaking. Sarah looked at Ethan again, but her expression was changing now. There was still suspicion, but it had begun to mix with something more uncertain. "What did he say to you?" she asked. Luma answered without delay, as if the words had stayed with her every day since then. He said, "You're okay. I've got you." No one spoke. He wrapped my leg, Luma said. Then he gave me the heat pack from his own suit. I told him he needed it too, but he said I was smaller and losing warmth faster. A weak, tearful smile touched her face, for the first time. He spoke very simply so I would not panic. Ethan looked away for a moment. He did not like being watched like this. Luma's smile faded. Then he picked me up and carried me out of the shuttle. Sarah's eyes widened into the storm. Luma nodded. Double quotes, "There was no safe place," she said. The shuttle was going to explode. He knew it, so he carried me across the rocks while the wind hit us. I could not even open my eyes. I remember asking him why he was helping me. Sarah swallowed slowly. "And what did he say?" Luma stared at Ethan again. He said, "Because no one gets left behind." The words settled over the room like a final truth. Now even the people who had doubted her were silent. Luma's lower lip trembled. He found a small cave and stayed there with me through the night. He blocked the wind with broken metal from the shuttle. He gave me water, kept talking so I would stay awake. Her voice grew weaker. "He should have left me," she whispered. If he had been alone, he could have moved faster. He could have reached safety. Sarah's hand tightened around her daughter's shoulder. "Luma."
But
The girl shook her head. "No," she said. "She needs to know." Then she looked at her mother with tears falling freely now. "He should have died that night because of me." That sentence hit the room harder than anything before it. Sarah went still. A cold feeling passed through everyone nearby, and for the first time since Ethan had walked in. The question was no longer whether Luma was telling the truth. The question was what that truth had cost him. Luma's last words stayed in the air like a warning. No one in the medical hall spoke. The staff, the nurses, even the patients in nearby recovery beds seemed to feel that something larger than a simple reunion was happening. A hidden story was opening, and every new piece made the room heavier. Sarah slowly turned toward Ethan until, now, she had looked at him like a stranger with dangerous answers. But now there was something else in her face. Doubt, confusion, a painful need to understand. "You survived," she said quietly. Ethan gave a small nod. Yes, that one word made Luma suck in a breath. For months, maybe longer, she had believed he was dead. She had lived with the memory of that freezing night, with the guilt of being carried to safety while the human who saved her stayed behind in the storm. She had told herself there was no way he could live through it. No one could. Yet here he was, alive, breathing, standing only a few steps away. Luma stared at him as if her mind still could not fully accept it. "I thought," her voice broke. "I thought you never made it out." Ethan's expression softened, but only a little. He was not a man who showed much emotion on the surface. Too many years of war and hard duty had taught him to keep things locked down. Still, his voice was gentler when he answered her. "I almost didn't." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Luma lowered her eyes. Sarah heard it too. "Then why were we never told?" she asked. "If a human saved my daughter, if he nearly died doing it, why does no official record say anything?" Ethan did not answer immediately. He looked past Sarah for a moment, toward the glass wall at the far end of the hall. Beyond it, the stars of Lyra 7 shone in cold silence. He looked like a man deciding how much truth to give. Before he could speak, a new voice cut in. "That is because the record was altered." Everyone turned. An older alien officer stood near the side entrance of the hall. He had likely entered during Luma's story, but no one had noticed. He wore the dark uniform of Station Security Command, marked with silver rank strips on his collar. His face was lined with age, and one eye was replaced with a pale mechanical lens. Commander Vell stood with his hands behind his back, studying Ethan in a way that was not friendly but not hostile either. Sarah's eyes narrowed, altered. She repeated. Vell stepped closer, his mechanical eye making a faint clicking sound. The border report was sealed under restricted review. Only command-level officers were allowed to see the full version. Sarah's voice sharpened, and I was not one of them. Vell did not react to her anger. "You were given the civilian version. It removed several details." Luma looked between them, confused and upset. Why? The commander's gaze shifted to Ethan, because his presence at the crash site was not supposed to exist. That sentence pulled every eye back to the human. Ethan remained still, but his jaw tightened slightly. He knew where this was going. Sarah took one step forward. "Explain us." Vell gave a slow breath. "At the time of your daughter's crash, Ethan Ward was part of a human border recon unit operating in a restricted sector. His team was on a mission that was not public. If his location became known, it would have caused political problems." For both sides, Sarah's face hardened. "So they erased him from the story." Vell nodded once. "Yes." Luma looked stunned. "But he saved me." "Yes," Vell said. "And that is exactly why it became complicated." Ethan finally spoke. "Commander, that's enough." But Vell ignored him. His orders were clear. Vell said to Sarah, "Observe, report, avoid contact." Instead, he entered a crash zone in hostile weather, exposed his position, and sent an emergency signal on an open channel so your daughter could be found. Sarah looked at Ethan with growing disbelief. "He broke mission orders." "He did," Vell said. Luma's face went pale again. "Because of me?" No one answered her right away. That silence was answer enough. Ethan looked at Luma. "You were a child alone in a storm," he said. There was nothing to think about. But to the people around him, there had been plenty to think about. Human soldier crossing lines to save the daughter of an alien noble family. A secret mission exposed. Command rules broken. Political damage possible. It was the kind of event leaders buried fast. Sarah's breathing became slow and controlled. The way people breathe when trying not to lose control. "And after he sent the signal?" she asked. Vell's face darkened. His position was hit by the storm front. His team lost contact. Recovery search found your daughter first. By the time they went back for him, he was gone. Luma looked back at Ethan, eyes wide. Gone. Ethan gave a faint, humorless smile. "I found another way out." Vell's mechanical. I focused sharply on him, against all probability. One of the nurses whispered to another, but neither looked away from Ethan. Luma could not stop staring. At him, the human she remembered had been bleeding, exhausted, and barely standing. Yet even after carrying her through the storm, after being left behind, he had still survived. He had survived alone. Sarah studied him in silence for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been building inside her from the start. Why? Are you here now? Ethan lifted the data case slightly. Official delivery. Nothing more. It sounded honest, but the timing felt too strange to believe. Before Sarah could press him further, Commander Vel's mechanical eye narrowed. Then his face changed. Recognition hit him fully at last. He looked at Ethan not as a soldier, not as a witness, but as someone whose name had appeared in old reports whispered about behind sealed doors. Vel's voice became lower. "Wait," he said. "Ethan Ward." The room stilled again. The commander's face lost color, and when he looked up, there was real shock in his eyes. "You're not just the man from the crash," he said. "You're the one from Black Reef." Sarah's question stayed between them like a blade. For a moment, Ethan did not answer. He stood with the sealed data case still in his hand. Shoulders straight, face calm, but the silence around him told its own story. A man did not stay silent like that unless the truth hurt more than he wanted others to see. Luma watched him with wide, wet eyes. She already feared the answer. Commander Vel gave it first. "Yes." He said the word was quiet, but it struck hard. Luma's breath caught. Sarah closed her eyes for 1 second, as if trying to hold herself steady. The medical staff around them remained frozen in uneasy silence. Even those who knew nothing about politics could understand what this meant now. Ethan had not only risked his life in the storm, he had paid for it after he survived. Sarah opened her eyes again and looked at Ethan. What happened? Ethan shifted the data case from one hand to the other. "It was an internal review," he said. "Nothing special." Vel's mechanical eye clicked softly. "That is not true." Ethan's jaw tightened, but Vel continued anyway. "He was called before a military board," the commander said. "They questioned him for breaking recon orders, exposing a hidden position, making unauthorized contact, and risking mission security for a civilian from a non-human species." Luma's face went pale again. "Because of me," she whispered. Ethan turned to her at once. "No." His voice was sharper this time, stronger. "No," he repeated. "Because of their rules." That made the room go still again. Luma looked at him, tears falling freely now. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to push away the heavy guilt pressing inside her chest. But she remembered the cold cave, his shaking hands, the way he gave. Her warmth even when his own body was failing. She remembered how weak he looked when he thought she was not watching. He had already been close to his limit. And after all that, his own people had judged him. Sarah spoke more carefully now. "What did the board decide?" Ethan gave a dry smile that held no joy. "That I was difficult." Vel answered more directly. "He lost command recommendation. He lost field advancement. His record was marked for disobedience under pressure." Younger Minek near the wall looked stunned. For saving a child, Vel turned his head slightly. For choosing his own judgment over mission law. The medic said nothing after that. Luma wiped her face, but her hand was shaking too much to clear the tears. "You saved me," she said to Ethan, "and they punished you." Ethan's eyes softened, but only a little. "That is not the whole story." "Then tell me the whole story," Luma said. For the first time, there was strength in her voice. Ethan looked at her for a few seconds before speaking. "The truth," he said. "The board wanted me to regret it." No one spoke. "They asked if I understood the cost. They asked if I would make the same choice again, knowing what it would do to the mission." His face remained calm, but his voice grew colder. "I told them yes." Vel let out a slow breath. He remembered reading that line in the sealed report. He had not believed anyone could answer so simply in front of a military board that was deciding his future. Sarah stared at Ethan, unable to hide her disbelief. "You said that to them?" "Yes, and you were not afraid." Ethan looked at her. "Of them?" "No." That answer changed something in this room. Not loudly, not suddenly, but clearly. The people around him stopped seeing only a soldier under review. They began to see the deeper truth. Ethan had known the cost and accepted it anyway. Not because he wanted praise, not because he wanted to be seen as noble. He had simply decided that a child dying alone in the cold was unacceptable. That was all. Luma pressed both hands together to stop them from shaking. "Why?" she asked again, this time in a smaller voice. "Why did you do it?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "When I found you," he said, "you were trying very hard not to cry." Luma blinked in surprise. "You were scared." He went on. "You were hurt. But you were still trying to be brave." His voice became quieter. "I have seen grown soldiers break faster than that." Sarah's expression slowly softened. Ethan continued, "You reminded me of someone I used to know. So I picked you up and got moving." That answer was not complete. Everyone could feel it. There was another story hidden behind it, another memory Ethan was not ready to share. But what he said was enough. Luma lowered her head and cried silently. Sarah placed a hand on her daughter's back and looked at Ethan in a very different way now. The fear she had felt before had thinned. It had not vanished completely. Humans still carried power. And Ethan carried more than most, but fear was no longer the strongest thing in her eyes. Respect was, and regret. "I judged you before I knew anything," she said quietly. Ethan did not react much. "That makes two of us." Sarah frowned slightly. "You judged me." He nodded once. Noble station official, cold posture, guarded voice. "I assumed you would hate hearing this story." A faint, tired smile touched Sarah's face for the first time. "I may still hate parts of it." "Fair enough," Ethan said. That small exchange broke some of the tension, but not all of it, because the truth still sat heavily on Luma's heart. She looked up at him again. "You lost your future because you saved me." Ethan answered at once. "No." Luma swallowed. "Then what did you lose?" This time, Ethan was the one who looked away. Before he could answer, a loud alarm cut through the medical hall. A harsh red light flashed across the walls. Patients startled. Nurses turned in panic. The soft blue calm of the room vanished in an instant. Commander Vell touched the comm device at his collar. A burst of static hit the air. Then a frightened voice came through. "Security breach. Unknown ship entering lower orbit. Defense grid is jammed. Possible targeted approach toward the station." The message broke apart in noise. Vell's face went hard. Sarah's arm tightened around Luma. Then another voice came through the comm. This one sharper, full of fear. "They're asking for the girl." Everyone in the room went cold. Luma stared ahead. Frozen, Sarah's expression filled with horror. And Ethan Ward, who had spent the last few minutes standing still and quiet, slowly set asterisk. The red warning lights turned the medical hall into a place of fear. Only minutes earlier, it had been quiet and still. Now, alarms screamed from the walls. Nurses rushed between recovery beds, and security shutters began sliding down over the glass panels with loud metal thuds. Patients who could stand were being pulled toward emergency corridors. Those who could not were quickly locked into mobile life support frames. Commander Vell touched his comm again. "Report," he said. Static answered him first. Then a strained voice came through. "Unknown vessel locked above the station's lower ring, jamming all external channels. Docking clamps on Sector 4 are compromised. Security teams are moving. But we may already have boarders." Vell's face turned grim. "How many?" No count yet, Commander. But they sent a direct demand. Vel already knew the answer. The girl? Yes. Luma's knees almost gave out. Sarah caught her at once and pulled her close. The noblewoman's face stayed controlled, but fear was now plain in her eyes. She had worked hard to protect her daughter after the crash, hard to bury what happened near the border. Hard to believe the danger had passed. It had not passed. It had only waited. Luma's voice came out small and broken. They found me. Ethan stepped closer, not too fast, not in a threatening way. Who are they? He asked. Sarah looked at him. For 1 second, she seemed ready to say nothing. Then the station shook under a distant impact, and whatever barrier remained inside her gave way. She saw something before her shuttle went down. Sarah said. Vel turned sharply. Sarah, not here. It is already here. She snapped. That stopped him. Sarah took a breath, forcing her words steady. Her transport was crossing the border archive lane. It was supposed to be a safe route, but another vessel passed. Close by, it should not have been there. Luma looked through the side window and saw containers being moved between ships. Ethan listened without speaking. Sarah continued. The containers carried restricted marks, weapons marks. Black market. War stock. Her voice hardened. Someone was moving illegal weapons through protected space. Vel's jaw tightened. You told the council it might have been cargo confusion. I lied, Sarah said. Because when Luma's shuttle was hit moments later, I understood it was not confusion. Luma held onto her mother's sleeve with both hands. They wanted to erase the witness, Ethan said. Sarah gave a grim nod. Yes, another blast hit the station, closer this time. The lights flickered. Somewhere beyond the hall, people screamed. Vel turned toward the nearest security panel and pulled up a map of the station. Several corridors flashed red. Sector 4 breached, he said. 3 entry points. They are moving fast. The medics in the room looked to him for orders, but Vel's usual certainty had cracked. The station was built for healing and trade, not for close battle with a determined enemy. Ethan looked at the map once. That was all he needed. How long until they reached this level? He asked. Vel checked the feed. If they know where she is, 6 minutes. Maybe less. Sarah went pale. Luma whispered, Mom. Ethan stepped toward the map. Where are the civilians being moved? Upper shelter ring, Vel answered. Too slow, Ethan said at once. He pointed at a side route on the display. This service corridor connects to the old diagnostic wing, right? Vel looked surprised. Yes, but it was closed months ago. Closed is fine, Ethan said. Sealed? No. Good move. The patient's that way. It narrows here and here. He tapped 2 points. Easy to defend. 1 security team at each turn. Keep non-combat people behind the second seal. Vel stared at him for a second. You learned the station layout from one glance. Ethan did not bother answering. He turned to Sarah. Can Luma walk? Luma straightened a little before her mother could answer. Yes. Can you run if needed? She hesitated, then nodded. Good. Vel folded his arms. And what exactly do you plan to do, human? Ethan looked directly at him. By time, Sarah's eyes sharpened. You are not staying behind alone. Ethan gave her a flat look. That depends on how badly you want your daughter alive. The words were hard, but not cruel. They were. Simple truth. Vel zoomed in on the map. Security teams are scattered. We do not have enough trained people for a full defense. You have enough if they stop acting like station guards, Ethan said. Right now, they need to act like survivors. Frowned, and you think they will follow your orders. At that moment, another explosion shook the hall so hard that one of the hanging light strips crashed to the floor. Nurses screamed. A patient cried out. Smoke began drifting in from under the far door. Ethan picked up a fallen emergency rifle from an open wall locker, checked the power cell, and handed it to Vel with practiced speed. "Not my orders," he said. "A plan." That made Vel pause, because the human's voice had changed. It was calm, cold, focused, not proud, not dramatic, just ready. Vel looked around at the panicked medics, the frightened child, the shaking station staff, and the flashing red map. Then he looked back at Ethan and understood something very important. This was no longer a reunion story. This was the kind of moment that made legends. Vel turned to the nearest guards. "You heard him? Move the patients through the service corridor. Now, Team 1, take the first turn. Team 2, lock down the second seal. No one breaks formation." The guards moved at once. Sarah looked shocked by how quickly command had shifted. Luma looked at Ethan with a mix of fear and trust. "What about us?" she asked. Ethan's gaze softened for the briefest moment. "You stay between me and your mother." Then the far door at the end of the medical hall burst inward. Smoke rolled across the floor. A dark armored figure stepped through the broken frame. Then another. Then 3 more. Their helmets were black. Their armor marked with no nation or species sign. Professional, clean, silent. One of them raised a weapon and pointed it into the room. A metal voice came through the speaker in his mask. "Release the witness," it said, "and no one else needs to die." The room froze. Ethan slowly moved in front of Sarah and Luma. His grip tightened on the rifle. Without looking back, he said in a low, steady voice, "This time, I'm not leaving you behind." The armed figures had only just stepped through the broken doorway when Ethan fired the first shot. He did not wait for them to settle. He did not waste time speaking. The blast from his rifle struck the lead attacker in the chest and threw him backward into the smoking frame. At the same time, Ethan grabbed a nearby medical cart with his free hand and kicked it hard across the floor. The cart slammed into the second intruder's legs, knocking him off balance before he could aim. "Move," Ethan shouted. "That one." Word broke the room out of its frozen fear. Commander Vel raised the rifle Ethan had handed him and fired toward the doorway. 2 station guards rushed to pull a heavy storage unit across the side entrance. Nurses pushed patients toward the service corridor. Sarah held Luma close and moved exactly where Ethan had told her to move. Between him and her mother, Luma's heart pounded so hard it hurt. The red emergency lights flashed across the walls, over the smoke, over the fallen cart, over Ethan's face as he moved with terrifying speed. He looked nothing like the quiet man who had walked into the hall carrying a message case. Now he looked like something else entirely. Focused, sharp, dangerous. One of the attackers fired, and bright energy hit the wall beside Ethan, burning a black line through the metal panel. He dropped low, rolled behind an overturned bed frame, then came up and fired twice more. One shot hit the attacker's shoulder joint. The second shattered the weapon in his hands. Vel stared for half a second in disbelief. The human was not just fighting, he was controlling the room. "Fall back by sections," Ethan called. "Do not bunch together." The station guards obeyed without thinking. Even Vel did. There was no room left for pride. Not when survival now depended on the only person present who clearly knew how to stop trained killers in close quarters. Sarah pushed Luma toward the service corridor while a nurse helped guide 2 injured patients behind them. But just as they reached the narrow side passage, another blast struck the ceiling near the opening. Sparks rained down. A support panel fell across the floor, blocking half the path. Luma cried out and stumbled back. One of the attackers saw her. He broke away from the doorway and rushed forward, weapon raised, ignoring the fire around him. Witness spotted. He shouted. Sarah turned to shield her daughter. But she was too far away. Ethan moved first. He crossed the room in a burst of speed that seemed impossible after everything he had already done. He slammed into the attacker from the side, driving him hard into the wall. The enemy tried to swing the weapon around, but Ethan caught the barrel, twisted, and forced it upward just as it discharged. The shot burned into the ceiling. Then Ethan struck once with his elbow, once with his knee. The attacker dropped. Luma stared, shaking as Ethan grabbed the fallen weapon and fired toward the doorway without even looking fully back. Another attacker dropped behind the smoke. Vel let out a stunned breath. "He's reading them before they move," he muttered. Sarah heard him for the first time. She understood why some beings admired humans and others feared them. It was not only strength, it was commitment. When a human decided someone mattered, they could become unstoppable. "Go," Ethan ordered again. This time, Sarah did not hesitate. She pulled Luma through the half-blocked service corridor while Vel and 2 guards covered the rear. The group rushed into the old diagnostic wing, a narrow set of dim halls lined with unused queues, machines, and sealed treatment rooms. The air smelled of dust and cold metal. Behind them, the sounds of battle followed shots, shouts, boots, striking metal floors. Luma wanted to look back, but Sarah kept pulling her forward. At the next junction, Vel turned. "Seal the first door." A guard hit the panel. Heavy plates slid shut just as blaster fire struck from the other side. The whole corridor shook. Luma's breathing came fast and ragged. "Where is he?" she asked. No one answered. Then the seal. Controls flashed red dots. Something on the other side was cutting through. Vel raised his rifle. Positions. The guards took cover. Sarah moved Luma behind an old diagnostic frame. The metal door groaned as heat from outside began melting the lock. Edge Luma's eyes filled with tears. Not again, she thought. Not again. The door burst inward. A body fell through. One of the attackers crashed. Face first onto the floor, Ethan stepped over him. There was a burn along one side of his jacket, and blood ran from a cut near his temple, but his eyes were clear and steady. "Second team coming," he said. 40 seconds, maybe less. Vel almost laughed from pure disbelief. "You fought through them alone." Ethan checked the charge level on his weapon. No, they were kind enough to make mistakes. Even now, with death close and smoke drifting around him, he sounded calm. That steadied everyone. Ethan looked at Vel. "Can the station still transmit on internal emergency band?" Vel nodded. "Short range only." "Good. Send one message." To every deck, Ethan's voice hardened. "Tell them the lower ring is still holding." Sarah frowned. "Still holding. We are trapped." "For now," Ethan said. "People fight harder when they believe someone is standing." Vel understood at once and sent the message across the station. Frightened workers, medics, and trapped civilians heard the words and held their ground a little longer. The next attack came fast, but this time the defenders were ready. In the narrow hall, Ethan turned the enemy's numbers against them. He directed fire, repositioned guards, forced the attackers into a choke point, and cut them down one by one as they tried to push through. Vel fought beside him. Sarah even took a dropped sidearm and held the rear corridor when one raider tried to flank. And Luma watched. She watched the human who had once carried her through freezing darkness now stand in bright red alarm light and hold back death again, not for glory, not for reward, for people, for her. At last, station reinforcements reached the wing from the upper levels. The attackers were trapped between two security lines and fell quickly after that. Within minutes, the corridor went quiet, except for the sound of smoke vents and tired breathing. It was over. The station had survived. Hours later, after medics treated the wounded and the fires were contained, the people of Lyra 7 gathered in the central hall. News of what had happened spread fast. Everyone now knew who had led the defense. Everyone had seen the truth with their own eyes. Sarah stood before Ethan, no longer as a suspicious official, but as a mother. She bowed her head. "You saved my daughter twice," she said. "And today, you saved everyone with her." Ethan looked uncomfortable, as if praise were the one thing he did not know how to carry. Then Luma stepped forward, without fear, without hesitation. She wrapped her arms around him. For a second, Ethan froze, then, very carefully, he placed a hand on her shoulder. The hall was silent, and in that silence, many finally understood the true power of humanity. Not just that humans could fight, not just that they could survive, but that when a human chose to protect someone, they could become the wall that darkness could not cross. Luma looked,